Just 5 years after the nuclear devastation at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world faced a new nightmare. For the first time since World War II, a fresh conflict erupted. This one fully fought during the Cold War. In Korea, a single people, united for centuries, was torn apart. 21 nations became involved, an alliance mosaic that forever altered the peninsula. 3 years of ferocious combat, over 2 million troops deployed, and more than 3 million casualties, both soldiers and civilians, nearly 10% of the Korean population at the time. Could the planet truly endure another cataclysm so soon? How could this happen? What interests and politics lay behind the international intervention? And why, more than 70 years later, has that war never truly ended, still shaping our world today? Under the Joseon dynasty, from 1392 to 1897, Korea experienced centuries of unified and relatively stable rule. Spanning roughly 220,000 square kilometers with a late 19th century population nearing 13 million, the peninsula stretched between the Yellow Sea to the west and the Sea of Japan to the east. Its capital, Hanseong, today Seoul, was strategically placed in the northwestern part of the peninsula. In 1897, after internal reform attempts and outside pressures, Korea proclaimed itself the Korean Empire, seeking to modernize its political structures. Yet the peninsula soon became a focal point in geopolitical rivalry among China, Russia, and Japan. Japan's victory in the 1905 Russo-Japanese War led to a protectorate over Korean territory, imposing strict limits on local sovereignty. In 1910, with Japan's formal annexation, a lengthy colonial era began, one that would reshape all of Korea. The country lost its autonomy and entered a new chapter under foreign dominance, forever altering its historical trajectory, a transformation felt across every province. Following the 1910 annexation, Japan imposed a harsh colonial regime in Korea that lasted until 1945. Public use of the Korean language was banned, while land and resources were seized to exploit the region's agricultural and mineral wealth. This policy widened the gap between the north, where factories and hydropower plants were built, and the south, which remained predominantly agrarian and lacked a solid industrial base. A key moment of resistance was the March 1st movement, Semeol-undong, in 1919, a mass protest demanding Korean independence. Though violently suppressed, nationalist sentiment grew stronger, driving many to exile or underground struggle. Meanwhile, Japanese occupation intensified. During World War II, over 200,000 Koreans were conscripted into Japan's military, and it is estimated that more than 200,000 Korean women were forced into sexual slavery in so-called comfort stations. In the north, certain communist activities received military and strategic support in Manchuria, among them Kim Il-sung, who, with Chinese training, several hundred fighters in total, possibly over 1,000 at various stages, and Soviet aid, formed well-organized guerrilla units capable of striking across the border. His rising stature drew new recruits and resources, setting the stage for future leadership. Elsewhere, both secular and Christian nationalists operated, creating a mosaic of resistance groups that, however fragmented, kept alive the spirit of independence. By the late 1930s, Korea's population exceeded 20 million, mostly engaged in agriculture, weakened by Japanese requisitions. As Allied forces advanced in Asia, aerial bombings hit strategic northern cities such as Hamhung and Wonsan, damaging the industrial infrastructure Tokyo had established on Korean soil.
Did you know that most people who watch our documentaries aren't subscribed yet? If you enjoy animated maps and history, join our community. Leave a like and subscribe so you never miss the next episodes.
In August 1945, Japan's surrender ended 35 years of formal occupation in Korea, yet genuine autonomy did not immediately follow. At the United States' proposal, accepted by the Soviet Union, the line separating their respective spheres of influence was drawn along the 38th parallel. To the north, the Red Army entered mainly from the Andong area, now Dandong, in China, and from the region near the Tumen River, basing Soviet operations in Pyongyang. To the south, American forces landed at Incheon and Busan, taking military and administrative control, with Seoul as their principal hub. This occupation was meant to be temporary, guiding Korea toward a single government, but stark disagreements between Washington and Moscow soon made any joint administration unworkable. The North, home to around 9 million people at that time, hosted most of the heavy industries, such as chemical factories, steel mills, and coal mines. Intense land reform and nationalization policies were introduced under Soviet oversight, fueling local communist leaders' popularity. Among them was Kim Il-sung, already noted for his guerrilla activities in Manchuria, who gradually tightened his hold on the region's political and economic apparatus. Rural communities in the north benefited from more equitable land distribution, while urban centers swiftly reoriented production to serve Soviet interests. The south, with an estimated population of 15 million, remained predominantly rural, though it boasted strategically vital ports like Busan and Incheon. Here, the U.S. occupation confronted growing social unrest, marked by popular demonstrations and violent clashes with government forces. Many leftist groups faced repression, while other factions openly embraced anti-communist policies. In 1947, the United Nations tried to organize free elections across the peninsula, but the North boycotted the plan, deeming Western involvement illegitimate. The following year, 2 separate states were formally established. In the South, the Republic of Korea led by Syngman Rhee, an ardent anti-communist prepared to unify the peninsula by force. In the North, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea under Kim Il-sung. This split, fueled by the mounting hostility between the United States and the Soviet Union, shaped the boundaries of a fracture bound to erupt into an even more devastating conflict. With the gradual withdrawal of U.S. and Soviet troops between 1948 and 1949, military presence in Korea dwindled to just a handful of advisors in each zone. Despite that, tensions ran high. Both the Republic of Korea and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea claimed to be the sole legitimate government of the entire peninsula. Along the 38th parallel, frequent clashes caused over 10,000 deaths, especially near Kaesong and Korwon. In the north, the army exceeded 130,000 troops, bolstered by around 150 T-34 tanks and plentiful Soviet-supplied light and heavy artillery. In the south, however, available soldiers numbered fewer than 100,000, mostly lightly armed and lacking any significant armored force. For Kim Il-sung, military superiority was pivotal. Aiming to reunify the peninsula by force, he sought support from Stalin and from China's newly established communist government. His close ties with Mao Zedong, cemented after the 1949 communist victory, secured a safe rear base for the north, along with training and supplies from beyond the Yalu River. Indeed, Mao's rise strengthened the Socialist Front in Asia, prompting the initially cautious Stalin to back the North Korean plan more openly. During that same period, global alignments were shifting swiftly. Europe was experiencing the Marshall Plan era and had just emerged from the 1948-49 Berlin blockade, while 1949 also saw the creation of NATO. In Asia, China's communist triumph placed the Korean peninsula in a far broader ideological contest, where Washington and Moscow tested their global clout. The South, militarily disadvantaged, relied on American support, though signals from Washington proved ambiguous. In January 1950, Secretary of State Dean Acheson delivered a speech excluding Korea from America's Pacific Defense Perimeter, the so-called Acheson Line. Kim Il-sung read that omission as a green light to act, moving the peninsula ever closer to open conflict, intensifying the likelihood of an armed confrontation in a region where rival ideologies threatened to clash at any moment ahead. In the spring of 1950, following protracted talks with Kim Il-sung, Stalin approved a plan to invade South Korea, provided Mao Zedong was ready to step in if required. Although he did not immediately commit regular troops, Mao promised political and logistical assistance, reserving direct intervention for when circumstances demanded. Encouraged by this socialist backing, the North amassed more than 135,000 soldiers near the 38th parallel, alongside over 150 T-34 tanks and hundreds of Soviet-made artillery pieces. In the South, fewer than 100,000 troops were available, mostly lightly armed and lacking armor. South Korean intelligence had noted suspicious troop movements close to the boundary, yet neither the scale nor timing of the offensive was fully grasped. At dawn on June 25, 1950, around 4 a.m., the North Korean army unleashed a multi-pronged assault, catching an unprepared southern defense off guard. Seoul fell within 3 days, triggering a vast civilian exodus and widespread panic behind the lines. At that moment, the Soviet Union was boycotting the UN Security Council over China's seat, thus unable to veto U.S. proposals. Capitalizing on this, the United States secured a resolution authorizing military involvement in Korea. A UN-backed coalition formed, with 16 member nations, including the US, UK, Australia, Canada, Turkey, and more, deploying troops on the ground. The North Korean invasion ignited the first major armed crisis of the Cold War. Washington responded decisively, sending large forces and materiel, convinced Seoul's fall was just the opening act of a conflict poised to reshape East Asia's balance of power. Western alliances, tested in Korea, would remain pivotal for years to come, laying the groundwork for a shifting global order defined by intensifying ideological rivalry. The peninsula's fate now hung in the balance, as opposing blocs squared off over strategic footholds and competing visions, launching a war that would ravage cities, divide families, and ultimately leave a legacy of bitterness and division still felt on the Korean peninsula to this day, with no resolution in sight. Within weeks, the North seemed posed to triumph, yet events took an unexpected turn when U.S. forces counteract and UN troops arrived. The war, locked in an armistice, has never truly ended, leaving the Korean peninsula divided to this day. To discover how this bloody conflict unfolds, subscribe to our channel, ring the notification bell, and stay tuned for more gripping episodes. Thank you for watching.